Russell Wilson traded to Denver. I hopped on Green Room just to help console Danny Kelly. He was traumatized. He was sucking his thumb in the corner. The Ringer's Danny Kelly, big Seahawks fan. There were rumors about, I had heard this for the last week that Russell was on the table. Teams are calling him. The Seahawks were denying it. Do you think this was related to the Rodgers contract announcement, and then 2 hours later we get a Wilson trade?
Yes, of course it was. And you know that because the report was this was not related. This was, please, it was not related. Like, why would you say that? It reminds me a little bit. Do you remember when Carmelo Anthony got traded? It was between the Knicks and the Nets. And as soon as that trade went through, Darren Williams got traded for the same package.
Yeah.
It's almost the same thing. The Nets were like, all right, well, we're going to give this package to Denver. We'll just give it to Utah, right? So it's a little bit like that. Yeah, I mean, Russell Wilson was their plan B. Aaron Rodgers was their plan A. I don't see how you can't draw that connection. It's the same genre of quarterback. It's the same commitment. My guess is that this is what Denver would have given up for Green Bay, to Green Bay, if Rodgers had chosen to play for Denver. So yeah, that's related.
My guess is there's probably a little more in the trade if it's Rodgers, but he's also more expensive for Denver. So, in a lot of ways, probably this is a better option for them. My big thing is, I just didn't think Wilson was good last year.
Yeah.
I think he was bad, but I didn't think he was good. I think he coasted on the reputation piece more than what the actual eye test was showing me. He doesn't run around like he used to.
Right.
I just didn't feel like he was as dangerous. And I felt like the guy from the first 4 or 5 years of his career versus the guy I watched last year, I thought there was some drop off. I really did. And I don't know whether that was he was starting to feel stale there, like he had one foot out, or whether he's just entering a different phase of his career. So what do you think?
Sure. A couple things. Number one, he had the finger injury, and that's a big deal. Like there aren't that many more subtle injuries that would affect a quarterback than a finger. It's not like a knee where you'd see it and you'd be hobbling around. Like the finger was impacting him the entire second half of the season.
But how does that explain the no running though?
He probably came back too early. No, that part is serious. And I was just talking to Danny Kelly offline about this, and he was just basically saying he's never going to be the same player again unless he starts running again, and it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. So that is a huge part of it. I would also say new offense. He was running the kind of McVay offense and ended up being the Russell Wilson offense again. At this point, I think we can start saying that anywhere he goes, it's going to be the Russell Wilson offense. And I think people thought there were going to be some structural changes, that he was going to get layups. That was the big buzzword this time last year. I didn't really see any. I think, Bill, that I do have a lot of questions about this. I understand why both teams did this, but I actually think that this is one of those trades where in 5 years, both teams will probably regret doing it. I don't think any team is going to have won this trade in any appreciable way. Denver was in this situation after Peyton Manning is retired. They've been in it every day since. That the only way they're going to get out of their rut is with a star quarterback. And they can keep playing the sort of scratch off lottery in the draft every year and try to go for a Malik Willis or a Kenny Pickett this year, or they can go with what they think is the sure thing. I understand why they're doing it, but it's interesting because when we did 2 emergency pods today, starting with the Aaron Rodgers thing, and the point I made on the Rodgers thing was that it's never happened that a team has traded a star quarterback they wanted to keep. It's never happened. And even if you look at the Jay Cutler thing a couple of years ago, that was because Josh McDaniels tried to get Matt Castle at the beginning of the offseason, and it kind of devolved from there, right? And I'm wondering if that's still true. Did the Seahawks want to keep Russell Wilson or not? It's just, I'd love to be a fly on the wall in the discussions of what they think he is going forward. I'd rather have Russell Wilson than what the Seahawks are about to do, which is being in the wilderness for a long time. But I don't think he's a super duper star at the level he has been.
Well, I asked Danny, when do you think the first hit piece is coming out from the Seattle side? And what's going to be in it? Because that's usually a piece of this, right? Where the guy leaves for a couple days, and then all of a sudden, first of all, it's the reporter dump, where the reporter has all the anecdotes they never wanted to use while the guy was on the team. They dump that.
Brian Curtis calls it the now they tell us piece.
Yeah, the now they tell us piece. So we have that, and then we have the history with Wilson, where it got really dicey with him in the defense for a couple of years. There were some crazy pieces of journalism written about the defense blaming him for losing the Super Bowl, that they felt like they didn't want to call the winning touchdown for Lynch because they wanted it to be Wilson's team and they wanted him to get the winning moment. And remember that I haven't read this in a while, but it was like they didn't they go to like Hawaii and they
went to Hawaii.
They were on the beach and they did like a whole big therapy powwow basically. And so I wonder, like, is there some diva stuff with him maybe?
I don't know if it's diva stuff. I mean, I think that the Malcolm Butler interception, you can make a case, kind of ruined the trajectory of that franchise. There was I think Seth Wickersham had the best piece on this a couple of months and years after that. There was trash talking at practice that probably went way over the line, that got personal. Like the team chemistry was ruined after a while. And when everybody was rowing in the same direction in Seattle, there was nothing like it. I mean, there was so much talent. The locker room was in a healthy place, I would say, and there was no passive aggressiveness whatsoever in 2013. Like, these guys were getting in fights all the time, whatever. It was a very strange but productive locker room. I feel like the Malcolm Butler play sent them in a bit of a tailspin that they never recovered from. And I think that if you were to point to a couple of things, I mean, that play obviously is one of the most significant ones in your life, but for Belichick, it also pretty much eliminated an NFC contender for the next few years. And so, Listen, they had chances to get back to it. Obviously, they kind of had a ceiling there for a while. The defense is not what it was. Pete Carroll came out a couple weeks ago and said he thought they'd been arrogant about the defense over the past couple of years. They need to rebuild. But right now, I don't think they got enough. This is not a sure thing haul. They already gave up 2 first-round picks for Jamal Adams. And so it's not like I'm sitting here saying, oh my God, this is like the Sashi Brown Browns where they're just going to have this war chest. They're going to go out and build. Like, this is no sure thing. They don't have any more draft capital than some of these other teams who have traded star players. So I'm a little confused as to who I'm supposed to say is going to be the better team in 3 years. I'm sorry, who would have won this trade in 3 years? Because I think we understand that the Broncos have a ceiling in the AFC West, and we know that the Seahawks just might not get appreciably better.
I thought Surtain was definitely in this trade when they announced it, and we didn't know who the particulars were. And then it came out and he wasn't in the trade. And I asked Danny when I hopped on that green room, like, at what point does a Seahawks fan, and you're on your text thread with all the other Seahawks fans, have the, wait a second, we didn't even get Surtain?
Yeah.
Moment of this trade where they get the 2 firsts, and I'm assuming they're going to just pick the quarterback 9th that everyone's gotten excited about. Yeah, and then you could be like, look, we've turned Wilson into a quarterback of the future, plus all this other stuff. He's cheaper. He's on a rookie QB thing. We had to reset our salary cap anyway.
Yeah.
I didn't mind what they got. I actually was surprised, even though Surtain wasn't in the trade, I was surprised Wilson was worth as much as this, but it goes back to what you said earlier.
Really?
Well, yeah, because he wasn't good last year. And you could blame the finger all you want, but he wasn't good in the second half of the year before either. And to me, it's like, if he's not scrambling around like he did the first 5 years, I don't think he's in like my top 7 or 8 anymore. I asked the guys in Green Room, is he right now, would he be a top 10 fantasy quarterback for you? And we went through the 10 guys and he was probably 10th. And there's probably 9 guys you would say are going to have better stats than them, even in this new offense in Denver, because I don't know, we have a pretty good sample size now that Wilson might be who he is. He had Lockett and Metcalf on his team last year and was still pretty erratic.
I understand that, but I'm just, when you consider the fact that good star quarterbacks so rarely become available, I just think that the price is artificially high. That's why I thought I wouldn't have been surprised if there was a 3rd first in this deal, or if there had been an actual star going Seattle's way, one of the receivers or something like that.
Well, what you get out of it is, first of all, you end this hamster wheel that you've had at QB really since the noodle arm year of Manning. And there's just nothing worse. Well, there are things worse because you're an Orlando Magic fan. So I'm sure you could come up with worst case scenarios of just year after year lottery picks and they're disappointing. When you don't have a quarterback for 2/3 of a decade, at some point you start to melt down mentally, especially as every conversation, including ones we have in our pods, is like quarterbacks lead, need a quarterback. And you're like, we have Drew Lock. We don't know. We're never going to have a quarterback. So you get Wilson and it's like Super Bowl champ.
By the way, congrats to Seattle for locking up Drew Lock in this trade.
Oh, they got him.
You gotta have
they got him. You got to extend him now. You got to keep him. But if you don't want
to get out leverage.
Yeah, you got to make sure you got to strike while they're inside. Yeah, but if you're Denver, you can really talk yourself fast in this trade. I wonder from the Seattle side, how you talk yourself into this trade, because Wilson at least gave you the illusion of competitiveness. Now you're looking at a 2-year rebuild and your coach is what, 75, 73?
Yeah.
Something like that. And so it's like you're throwing away this year, I guess. Then you're probably throwing away next year too as you extricate yourself from this cap stuff. So maybe that's
He's
how
70.
this needed to play out. He's 70.
I would also say, as much as it's the quarterbacks league, it's also an owners league. And Denver does not have an owner right now. That situation is completely up in the air. And Seattle is in a situation where I don't really think anyone knows how Jody Allen wants to run the franchise. And I think that is also probably true in Portland as well. And so in both of these cases, I'm confused as to the direction of both of them and where this is headed, because I don't know, like, is Denver in 6 months going to get
I think Denver thinks
for $4 billion?
But Denver's like, we're close with the Super Bowl this year. If we get a quarterback, we can actually win the Super Bowl.
But I don't think that's true. I don't. Do you think Denver is a Super Bowl contender? I think they went from the 4th best quarterback in the division to the 3rd best quarterback in the division just now. And I don't think that that's going to make such a huge difference that we're talking about them playing on January 28th.
Here are my Denver thoughts, because I certainly lost a lot of money on them the last 2 years, betting them week to week. And so did Sal. And we would always complain about it. It seemed like they had a lot of bad luck and a lot of underachieving based on what the talent potential was. We went in back-to-back years. We were going into seasons with people telling us this is the aberration team. If you look at all the luck they had last year, turnover luck and injury luck and this and that and schedule, and this is the team. And I bet them both of those years for the over, sleeper bets on the AFC West, stuff like that. And each year was, last year was less injuries and more, the offense was just so broken. It was easily the worst offense for what the talent was, because they actually had pretty good receivers. So I could see themselves talking themselves into, hey, you look at this team in the years past and this other team, and they had the quarterback, and then they nailed their draft. One good free agent. We have receivers. We have really good D-backs. We have a pass rush. Like, we're not that far away. I don't think that's wrong.
I think that they've been a very strangely run franchise. I think John Elway was really bad at running this team. And that's what a reputation of the John Elway era. Now that he's out, he's an outside consultant. They immediately get a short quarterback. After 7 years of just finding the tallest person available and saying, he's our quarterback, we're just going to go out and get the 5'10" guy. I think you're higher on the Broncos than I am. I just don't think that the line is subpar. I think they were 20th, something like that, in the PFF rankings last year. As a unit, I think they were 15th in pressures allowed. I don't know what the path is. And part of the problem is they just gave up a bunch of picks, to the point that if they were maybe a couple more moves away, they could make that jump. And so maybe it's a 2023 thing for me, but I'm not seeing it in 2022.
We know he's going to see it in 2022, Russell Wilson. FanDuel has Denver as the 5th best odds right now.
In the AFC?
For the Super Bowl. They have the Bills at 7-1, Chiefs plus 850, Packers 10-1, Rams 12-1, Broncos 12-1, Niners 13-1, Dallas 14-1, and then we go into the 20-1s with a whole bunch of teams. Niners 13-1. I think I would just flag that, because I still think Brady, there's a chance he comes back and he's their quarterback. And I also think they're going to get something for Garoppolo too in a trade.
I also think that there's a chance that if they have Trey Lance, they're going to be better than the Broncos.
Wow, you were shorting the Broncos.
I think they're fine. I think they're like a 6 seed. I think they're like a wild card team.
I'm more on your side from this respect. I don't know what Wilson is anymore. I don't think he's a superstar QB anymore, but could he be with those receivers? I also really like Javonte Williams. I was going nuts last year because I had him on every fantasy team, and I just felt like they didn't use him properly. I didn't think they rode him the way they should have. And I think that offense, if Wilson is back, if your finger excuse is a real thing, if he starts scampering around a little bit, changes scenery, it's basically like a second wife thing. I could see where their offense is really good. No, it's just like
I can too, but I just don't. First of all, Nathaniel Hackett, I think is a good coach, but I don't think he's a great coach. But I don't know how. I think we're on the same page about Wilson not being the guy he was, and the only way you can justify having the same odds as the team that just won the Super Bowl, having a better odds than the NFC runner-up last year in the Niners, significantly better odds than the defending AFC champion Bengals, who have a ton of cap space.
Right.
The Chargers are at plus 2,500. They have the most cap space in the league going in today before the Mike Williams extension. The Ravens are at plus 2,000. I think that this is just this plus 1,200 thing for the Broncos is completely out of whack.
I agree with that. I just like the Broncos the last couple of years. So we'll see. Sometimes the teams that go from we had the worst quarterback situation possible to, oh, now we have a competent guy, like that really can be worth something. But so much depends on the free agency draft.